Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to visiting lecture today with Help University Malaysia. Welcome to the Honorable Mr. Ravi Varmman Kanniappan as a senior lecturer. As for the topic today is driving sustainable business practice in ASEAN, opportunity, challenge, and best practice. And for today's session is will be being live stream on the Universitas STEKOM YouTube channel. And now I will read our agenda this afternoon. First, we will start class presentation delivered by Mr. Ravi and continue with the Q&A session after already presentation. And in the next session, we have time for documentation and last is closing. Okay, let's begin. We will start class presentation delivered by Mr. Ravi. The time is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Okay, hope you all can see my screen. All right. Okay, good afternoon, everyone who are present. I'm not sure how many of you are here today, but nevertheless, best wishes from Malaysia. Hello, apa khabar, Indonesia? Hope everybody is good. So today, all right, my topic will be driving sustainable business practices in ASEAN, opportunities, challenges, and best practices. So ASEAN has become a focal point. ASEAN has become a focal point today. More so, I think, in the last 2 or 3 years, Southeast Asia or ASEAN has become talk of the town, both economically as well as politically, and more importantly, even in terms of security as well. So we are in a hotbed of all the happenings of the global world. All right. So we host the most important trade channel, that is the Malacca Straits, right? The Sunda Straits, the South China Sea. All these are very critical areas that are important for global trade. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by giving a brief opening, all right, on what is ASEAN and what have they achieved so far, the construct of ASEAN, what have they achieved so far, and what are the objectives they intend to achieve in the future as well. And then followed by, I'm going to present to you several case studies, all right, of how companies in ASEAN countries have performed. How have they become game changers and have speared the way in establishing best practices, not only just within the region, but also globally. So without much ado, I'm going to start off. All right, as you all probably know, ASEAN is a regional intergovernmental organization comprising of currently 10 Southeast Asian countries. It was established way back in 1967 after the Bangkok Declaration. And the first 5 countries who were part of, or rather the founding members of ASEAN was Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. Of course, today, the membership have extended to all Southeast Asian nations, whereby Brunei joined in 1984, Vietnam in 1995, Laos in 1997, Myanmar also in 1997, and eventually Cambodia, the last country to join in 1999. Okay, so let me give you some historical context as to what prompted these 5 countries to moot the idea of having a regional grouping. So, as you all know, all right, 20th century saw many Southeast Asian countries gaining independence, all right, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and so on. So, by virtue of this independence, all right, this was post-colonial period. Until that point of time, until World War II, all Southeast Asian countries, except for Thailand was colonized by one power or the other. And particularly, it was colonized by European powers. So after World War II, of course, you all know, globally, many of these colonial masters withdrew and gave independence to various countries, whether in Southeast Asia, Asia, East Asia, Africa, South America. All right, you find that they withdrew and independence was established. However, when they withdrew, many of these countries, particularly when you're looking at Southeast Asia, they were underdeveloped countries. As you all know, the colonial masters were here only for one purpose, to extract resources, whether it was Indonesia, whether it was Philippines, whether it was Malaya at that time, it was known as Malaya, all right, Myanmar or Laos, it was basically to retrieve, to extract resources. So they were extracting, but very little was plowed back to the country. And then countries like Vietnam and particularly Vietnam, you find that Vietnam and Cambodia, you find war continued, right? The presence of foreigners also was there, right? So it took longer for them to gain total independence. But the rest of the countries, well, like Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, gained independence much earlier. As such, right, they felt that they need to have a joined effort, joined or rather a cooperation in order to establish regional solidarity. All right, so that was one of the first reasons. Secondly, of course, when you all should also know that after World War II, there was another war called the Cold War. The world was divided into the communist bloc, all right, and the non-communist bloc. The communist bloc was spearheaded by Soviet Union, which now no longer exists. Soviet Union doesn't exist, but today it was spearheaded by Russia at that point of time. And of course, the US was the non-communist bloc. So because of this, there was a tension, Cold War, and you find that at the same time during that period, there was this threat of communism seeping into other parts of the world, including Southeast Asia. Because as you all know, by 1950s and 60s, all right, China was already became a communist country. At the same time, the communism was also present. The ideology itself was present in Indonesia, in Malaysia, or Malaya, Thailand, Singapore, as well as Philippines. So they wanted to create a buffer, to protect these countries from the invading communist ideology. So that was another reason, all right, they want to jointly protect themselves from being influenced by communism, all right? And of course, there were also territorial disputes and interstate conflict, which necessitated a platform for dialogue. This is basically territorial disputes between Malaysia, Indonesia, Indonesia, Philippines, Philippines, Malaysia, Malaysia, Thailand, all right? So practically, there were certain territories, particularly islands and so on, which was disputed by all these countries. Again, this is a legacy left behind by the colonial masters. When they left, they did not leave clean. They also made sure that there will be tension. So all these has to be dealt with in a peaceful platform. So that is when these 5 countries organized, or rather mooted the idea of having ASEAN in order to forge cooperation, in order to use the platform to resolve any conflict if it occurs, and conflict meaning in terms of territorial conflict, which was already there. All right. So there were several motivation or reasons. Let's look at some of the specific reasons beyond these 3 basic factors. Let's look at some other critical reasons that sort of became the foundation of this so-called movement called ASEAN. Okay, So first is economic motivation. So economic cooperation, basically to promote regional economic growth and development, and also to facilitate trade and investment amongst member states. So to facilitate trade, that's the first one. Secondly is, of course, to create a market, to expand the market, to create a larger market for goods, services, all right, and industrial goods, and also to enhance competitiveness on a global scale. So beyond looking at the threat, beyond looking at conflict, they were also foresighted. They were looking at the future. What can this platform called ASEAN do? And at the same time, to reduce economic disparities, as you all know, all the countries in ASEAN do not share the same economic status. Some countries like Singapore is classified as an advanced country. Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand classified as industrializing countries. And then you can look at Myanmar or Laos considered to be underdeveloped or developing countries. So you find that even that time or even now, you find that there is a economic disparity amongst all the countries, member countries. So they were looking at ways how we can create a platform to forge equality in terms of trade. So that is the first reason, economic motivation. The second one is, of course, to establish political and security motive, right? So one is, of course, regional stability, to promote peace and stability in the region and to prevent external interference in domestic affairs. So we want to create a regional grouping, more importantly, to create stability, as well also, more importantly, to avoid foreign powers to interfere in our own affairs. All right. So if we have a problem, we'll take care of it ourselves. We don't need a third party to arbitrate. Secondly, conflict resolution, provide a platform for peaceful resolution of any dispute, trade or political, whatever dispute, and also to foster a sense of community and shared responsibility. So this again is very crucial, all right, because as I've said earlier, the dispute still exists. Let me tell you, still exists. Not at the same scale as it was in the 50s or 1950s or 1960s, but you find that those kind of issues still exist. And one of the most disputed territory would be the Spratly Islands. I'm sure you have read about the issues in Spratly Islands. And today China has built artificial reefs, all right, and they have their own military presence there. As much as ASEAN and ASEAN members have protested, but you find that from time to time, China has not obliged to the request of ASEAN member countries. So today it is still under conflict, I would say, and resolution seem not so clear whether we are going to reach any evidence, any resolution. We are still in the big question mark. We'll wait and see. And of course, to establish a collective voice, strengthen the region's bargaining power in international forum. So if you go as a group, you find that you'll have a bigger voice as compared to going individually and making a stand. So you find that as a regional grouping, you definitely would have a greater say, whether in United Nations or World Trade Organization, right? In any of these major platforms, okay? Thirdly is, of course, socio-cultural aspiration, promote understanding and appreciation of different cultures in the region and to foster people-to-people connection. So this is where we talk about tourism is a big business today in ASEAN, and social development to improve the quality of life for the people of ASEAN and to address social issues such as education, all right, health and eradication of poverty and so on. So all these are things that we are looking at as we go along. As I go along, I'll give you some statistics to support the achievement of ASEAN to date. And of course, eventually to build what we call a regional identity, a collective platform called ASEAN. And this in itself is to strengthen regional solidarity and a sense of belonging. So you find that ASEAN has come a long way, all right, in establishing a cohesive platform for cultural and social interaction between people. Today, you find that, as you all know, all right, some of you probably realize that inter-ASEAN tourism is big business. All right, people from Vietnam traveling to Malaysia, people from Malaysia traveling to Indonesia for leisure, for work. All right, all these have become what do you call it? A singular platform where you're able to exchange, where you're able to move. More importantly, ASEAN has made mobility of people easier. Right? Today, if you are ASEAN, if you're part of ASEAN, you can travel within ASEAN without without requirement of a visa. So an Indonesian can travel to Malaysia, Malaysian can travel to Vietnam, Vietnamese can travel to Thailand without the requirement of visa. So that in itself shows how ASEAN has given importance to mobility of people, both for leisure as well as for work. All right. So in that sense, all right, the ASEAN Charter was established. All right. The purpose of the ASEAN Charter is basically a legally binding agreement that serves as the constitution for the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. All right. It was adopted in November 20th in 2007 and came into force on December 15, 2008. So this is a legally binding document. That means if, let's say, if a member country, or member countries agree to a particular agreement, all right, or what do you call it, if they become a signatory to a particular understanding, then it becomes legally binding. So member countries have to abide by it. Non-compliance can lead to legal complications and so on. So that means ASEAN itself, right, is not just a common agreement or what we call a gentleman's agreement, but it is a legally binding platform. That means it has enforcement authority, monitoring authority in order to make sure, all right, member countries comply and conform to whatever has been agreed upon. Okay, so what are the key principles of ASEAN Charter? These are some of it. Respect for sovereignty, emphasize mutual respect for the independence of sovereignty, what do you call it? Equality, territorial integrity, and national identity of all member states. So what it means here is no one member country would interfere in another member country's politics, would not interfere in any other member country's security, right? They would not interfere, all right, because that is what we call mutual respect, all right? So, for example, some of you probably know Myanmar is a country that is ruled by military junta. I'm sure you are aware. And in fact, in the last 20 years, Myanmar went through 2 general elections. All right. And after each of the general election, you find that the opposition party away from the military won majority. However, after allowing the government to be formed by the opposition, the last one, about 2 years, 1.5 years down the line, the military seized power again because they felt that they were losing control. So even in that circumstances, all right, member countries did not interfere because that is an issue that has to be dealt within the country. So we do not, member countries do not impose principles or impose political or any other pressure on member countries. All right. Number 2, adherence to rule of law. Commitment to uphold the principles of democracy, the rule of law, and good governance. All right, as I've said just now, this is what we want. However, all right, however, things can go wrong, but we do not interfere. I think some of you probably would know, even in Indonesia, right, after the Asian financial crisis of 1997, there was an internal conflict in Indonesia that eventually led to the ousting of the former president Suharto. I'm sure all of you know. And even during that period, all right, other member countries did not interfere in what was happening in Indonesia, because we believe that it is up to the Indonesians to deal with it and resolve it, rather than anybody else coming in to interfere in that sense. All right. Number 3 is to promote peace and stability. The aim is to maintain peace and stability in the region, through peaceful resolution of disputes. All right. So if there are issues between member countries, all right, it has to be dealt with peacefully. From time to time, we have issues like Malaysia and Singapore. We have issues, all right. Malaysia and Thailand also had issues similarly, all right. Or even Indonesia and Philippines will have that. But all these disputes, if it arises, it would be dealt with in a peaceful manner using that particular ASEAN platform. The 4th one is, of course, economic integration. To strive, the objective is to strive for closer economic integration, including the creation of ASEAN Economic Community. This is the ultimate thing, or this is the ultimate, to create a single platform, to create a single economic platform. Well, we are working towards that. We have not achieved that, but that is the ultimate goal, to create a single platform. Now, we will talk about the challenges later. Then you will know why it is being delayed. What are the challenges that's making the delay, or creating the delay, or derailing the effort to create an ASEAN economic community. Later we'll look at that. And then social progress and cultural development. This is one of the most successful aspect of ASEAN, promoting social progression, cultural development, and regional identity. This is already happening, and I think we can see that in terms of tourism, leisure, a lot of things happening there. And of course, one of the things that I'm going to discuss later, which is the focal point of our discussion, is environmental sustainability, and how ASEAN member countries and member companies within ASEAN have actually adopted and successfully have progressed in maintaining or in preserving environmental sustainability. We'll talk about that as we go along. All right. Okay, next let's look at the challenges. Now, this is where we're going to talk about the challenges. All right. One more thing before I go on. I'm going to give you a lot of information. Probably I will share this with the university, meaning my document with the university. So later, if anybody wants to have access to this document, all right, y'all can take a look at it on your own. So no worries. If later, if you have any questions that you like to ask me, please do so. All right. I'll be most happy to oblige if you have any question or any doubts that you would like to clarify. Okay. Okay. Let's look at the first challenge. All right, in establishing ASEAN as a constructive regional grouping. So here we're going to look at political and security challenges. So the thing is, in ASEAN, all right, you find that each of the countries that are in ASEAN belong to different political systems. We do not have a singular political system. All right. In Indonesia, you practice Republic of Indonesia. You've got a president, and you have got that that particular ideology that you all prescribe to. In Malaysia, all right, we have got a parliament, all right, which is headed by a monarch, all right, the Agong, and then the head of the state would be the prime minister, all right. Similarly, if you look at, I just mentioned about Myanmar. Myanmar is a what we call ruled by a military junta, all right? And then if you look at Laos and Vietnam, they are basically communist countries. So you have got varied political system ranging from democracy to authoritarian regime like in Myanmar. So it is often difficult to reach consensus when you have got multiple political system or ideology in practice, all right? So next thing is, of course, territorial disputes, all right? Ongoing territorial disputes, particularly in South China Sea. I just mentioned to you about the Spratly Islands because that particular atoll, it's called an atoll. Spratly Island is not really an island. During high tide, it goes under the water. During low tide, you can see the reefs and so on. Of course, China has built artificial reefs and created landing navy, a small navy base as well as a landing strip. However, that particular territory is being disputed or claimed by Malaysia, Vietnam, China, Indonesia, Philippines. Everybody says it's their territory. So it's a big question mark there. So this has to be dealt with as well. And then you've got internal conflict and political instability. For example, in Myanmar, it's an ongoing thing, as I've said. So they have not settled their own governance issue. So you find that if one country agrees or 7 countries agrees, and then you find 2 or 3 countries do not agree because of their own internal issues, you find that you may not be able to come up with a holistic agreement. So again, that's an issue. And of course, non-interference policy itself, a commitment to the principle of non-interference limits ASEAN's ability to address internal issues of member states. So we can't interfere. So if we can't interfere, we can't tell them what to do. So when we can't tell them what to do, we as in other members, that's what I mean. When I say we are referring to other members. So like things are what's going on in Myanmar, all right, as much as there has been a lot of issues in Myanmar, all right, the Rohingya issues, the Rakhine issues, all right, refugees and so on and so forth. It's already happening, but we can't do anything about it because by principle, ASEAN has adopted a non-interference policy. So therefore, you cannot just go and say, do this, do that, whatever not. So we can't impose. That's what it means. We can't impose. So when you can't impose, it will sort of delay. We have to wait until issue settles internally before we can bring a particular agenda to be discussed and to be adopted or endorsed eventually. Okay. The next one, all right, is of course the other challenge is of course the economic disparity, all right, that creates an issue. Varied levels of development, significant economic disparities between member states. You have got Singapore and Brunei, who are extremely rich. Brunei is a oil-rich country, though it's a very small country, but it's oil-rich. Singapore is just an island, it's an island, all right, but also a very progressive, developed country. Singapore is considered to be the financial hub for Asia, all right, and it is also recognized as a global financial hub, like Hong Kong, like New York. Singapore is also considered to be a financial hub. So that is being on one extreme, and then you have got another extreme, countries like Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. All right, we are still under the stage of underdeveloped countries, particularly Laos and Myanmar. Cambodia has progressed much, but Laos and Myanmar are still lagging behind. And then in terms of economic integration, challenges in achieving seamless economic integration due to different levels of infrastructure and development, right? So you have got a country like Singapore where they have got efficient infrastructure, all right, both financial infrastructure, physical infrastructure, service infrastructure, excellent, all right, on one hand. And then you've got countries like Malaysia and Indonesia or even Thailand. We are in the process of establishing all this infrastructure in place, all right? So all this has to be dealt with, right? And then trade barriers, persistence of non-tariff barriers and protectionist policy where slow progress towards the ASEAN economic community. In the sense that as much as we have, the ASEAN itself has created or reduced tariffs, all right, has done everything possible to reduce tariffs and other barriers, but barriers still exist. Protectionist barriers still exist. That means protecting their own economy. For example, Malaysia, despite the fact that Malaysia is a signatory of the automobile trade agreement, all right, you find that Malaysia still imposes a very high domestic tax for vehicles that are assembled in ASEAN member countries. Technically, we shouldn't, all right, but then we have got under the guise of sales tax, all right, we have imposed a very high tax for cars that are assembled in ASEAN to be brought into Malaysia. So these are things that is already there. So every country, like I think some of you probably would know, recently I just read that the Indonesian government, right, are going to impose a ban on iPhone 16. Are you all aware of that? I just read about it 2 days ago, all right, because of the reason why, because of local content policy. Because as far as Indonesia is concerned, all right, you have this policy of local content in order to bring in the goods. But as far as what do you call that, iPhone 16 is concerned, it is not, and therefore there's a possibility that the Indonesian government may impose a ban on iPhone 16. So this is the kind of trade barriers you're talking about. So different countries may. So what is going to happen is probably somebody may just buy it in Malaysia and smuggle into Indonesia, right? In that sense, if it happens. So all these are issues that we have to look at. Okay. And then global competition. ASEAN economies face intense competition from other global markets. So every country in ASEAN, every member country in ASEAN would want the best for their own country. So as much as you've got a regional grouping, trying to have a regional understanding and putting forward regional expectation, but then because all the countries are completely diverse, you find that they are not in a level playing field. So member countries may make private deals, may establish one-to-one trade agreements, right, between other countries, global countries or global companies in order to facilitate their own interests within their own country. All right, so these are some of the issues that you may face when you talk about when you're talking about economic disparity. All right, next is of course socio-cultural diversity and institutional challenges. All right, so as diverse here, socio-cultural diversity starts with language, religion within ASEAN. Again, this can be also an issue. For example, if you look at Indonesia, it's very interesting. Indonesia is the which has the largest Muslim population in the world, largest Muslim population in the world. All right. However, in Indonesia, the Muslims are free to prescribe to any Islamic denomination. All right, you can be a Sunni, you can be a Shia, or belong to any particular Islamic denomination. However, if you look at Malaysia, it's a different story altogether. In Malaysia, you can only be a Sunni Muslim. If you're a Malaysian Muslim, you can only be a Sunni Muslim, and you are not allowed to be belong to any other Muslims in that sense. All right, so here you've got a Muslim majority country, all right, with multiple Islamic denominations, and then in Malaysia you have got Muslims. Sorry, Malaysia is not a Muslim country, but Malaysia is a Muslim majority country, right? So you find that here you are only allowed to. I mean, you are only by law, by Sharia law, all right. You are only allowed to be a Sunni Muslim. All right, and then you've got Philippines majority who are Christians, you've got Thailand majority who are Buddhists, all right. So you have got a very varied religious perspective. Even language, as much as Indonesia, Bahasa Indonesia and Bahasa Malaysia has got a lot of similarities, but both has its own branches, has its own dynamics. All right. So even that, we share a common root, all right, but then in practice it's different. All right. So likewise, in Thailand, they've got Thai language. In Vietnam, they got Vietnamese language and so. So you find that to create, in fact, there was a time where there was a suggestion to adopt a single ASEAN language as an official ASEAN language. But however, no countries were, member countries were unwilling to, endorse any particular language because each country believed that their own language is more important than or more critical than others or whatever. All right. So everybody has got their own interests, not about right or wrong. So eventually now we have endorsed English. So English is widely spoken global business language. So English has been adopted as a official language in terms of communication. Human rights issues, varied approaches to human rights and social policies, difficulty in creating a common framework for human rights. So again, this is a sticky issue. All right, very, very sticky issue where you find that some countries, abuse of human rights has been very high. In some countries, they are very, very gung-ho about human rights, workers' rights, for example. So these are things that we need to address. For example, you find that some countries, they have factories employ children. In some countries, in ASEAN, employ children. In some countries, they have got this thing called sweatshops, where workers are abused in that sense, especially immigrant workers are abused. I'm sure some of you probably have heard about how Vietnamese workers or Indonesian workers are abused in some parts of the world. So similarly, in fact, some of the abuse takes place between ASEAN countries. All right, so these are issues that need to be dealt with. Institutional weaknesses, limited resources and capacity of the ASEAN Secretariat, dependence on member states for implementation decisions. So even if it is endorsed, even a particular agreement has been adopted or rather agreed upon, signed and endorsed, but the problem is implementation. Many a times, all right, the implementation takes longer time because some member countries are not ready, for example, to adopt that particular, although in principle they agree with the agree with the policy, but then in terms of adopting it into their own country, they probably need more time. All right. So therefore, many of the agreements made takes longer time to be implemented. All right. And of course, consensus decision making. Requirement for consensus can lead to slow decision making process. Difficulty in addressing urgent and contentious issue. So, unlike the United Nations, where they take a vote, majority wins. Let's say there's a policy, all right, then in the United Nations, they take a vote, and then based on their vote, majority wins. But in ASEAN, it's not about majority, it's about consensus. Meaning, assuming a particular policy is being proposed, it's debated, and a resolution need to be made. That resolution must be voluntarily agreed upon by all member countries. Even if one country opposes, even if one country says we need more time to think about it, then you cannot proceed in adopting the policy. So just imagine getting consensus is not easy, especially when you find that all member countries are diverse. The disparity between one country and other, whether economically, politically, socially, or when you're diverse, it's very, very difficult to seek consensus. So it takes time. All right? Okay. So that came about. Then from there, all right, let's look at ASEAN. Today, our main discussion is about trade and business. All right. So ASEAN felt that they have to go to the next level. The next level beyond politics, beyond socio, what do you call that, progress and so on, all right? Socio-cultural progress and so on, they wanted to move the next level. The next level, of course, is trade. Trade means, of course, economy, right? Because the sustainability of any country, the future of any country is derived from economic success and economic stability. So that is why, all right, from ASEAN, ASEAN created the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, which is called AFTA. So what are the key objectives of AFTA? All right. Number one is to establish trade liberalization. All right. To eliminate tariff and non-tariff barriers among member countries so that there will be easy mobility of human capital, easy mobility of funds, finances, easy mobility of resources. So that is the idea. That means to liberalize, to create a free flow of all these three elements in an economy. All right. As much as I've said just now, as much as there have been many agreements made, all right, but there are still many more there. And many member countries still practice protectionist policy. That has to be addressed slowly, all right? But the objective is to liberalize. They have come a long way. Many areas have been liberalized, all right? The second one is economic integration, to promote a regional economic integration and cooperation between member countries. That's quite straightforward. I just mentioned just now. Also to increase competitiveness, to enhance ASEAN competitiveness as a global production base. Once upon a time, Malaysia, Singapore was the hub for manufacturing. Today, the largest hub for manufacturing or outsourcing in ASEAN would be Vietnam. All right. You find that, as you all know, China was the manufacturing hub. As much as China became a global manufacturing hub, today, after several cycles of economic prosperity, today China is no longer a cheap or low-cost haven for manufacturing. So today, more and more companies are moving out of China. And more importantly, after COVID, all right, because of so much of disruption, more and more companies are moving out of China, and this is being absorbed by Vietnam, Cambodia, Indonesia, all right, where the spillover, right, or the crossover is benefiting ASEAN. So you find that, one of the reasons, all right, why Indonesia, all right, is moving its capital from Jakarta to Kalimantan is basically to create new hubs. All right, do not want it to be concentrated and congested in one area. They want to open up new areas. It's a good idea, fantastic idea, right? Because there's a lot of land there, and of course, labor is also there, so you can tap that opportunity or potential. All right, to create greater investment attraction, to attract foreign direct investment to the region. All this while, this attraction was one-to-one. But ASEAN wants to create a single hub for international, as a international hub for investment in various fields. All right. And then market expansion, expand intra-ASEAN trade and create a larger market for goods and services within ASEAN. That means we want to create trade between ASEAN. Because ASEAN itself is a growing market, whether it's Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, all these are growing markets. So you find that You can manufacture here, produce here, and then feed the demand within ASEAN. So you can become a solid, self-sustaining economic grouping, like how European Union was at one point of time, right? That's why I use the word one point of time, because European Union is no longer as what it was before. And that's a different story altogether. But we want to create a more sustainable a regional economic grouping. Okay. So what are the core principles of AFTA? Well, number one, of course, is non-discrimination to ensure equal treatment for goods from all ASEAN member countries. So if a product is produced in one country, one ASEAN country, it should not be discriminated against in terms of imposing tariffs or whatever. No. Tariff reduction, gradual reduction of tariffs on intra-ASEAN trade through the common effective preferential tariff scheme. That means goods that are produced within ASEAN with local content would be given special preference. Okay. Harmonization, to harmonize customs procedure and standards to facilitate trade. This is ongoing. All right. They have not standardized it, but it's ongoing. Transparency, to promote transparency in trade regulation procedures. Again, this is ongoing. They are trying to establish that. Rules of origin, establish rules to determine the origin of goods eligible for preferential treatment. That means when you say it is locally manufactured or locally assembled, then it has to show proof that it is so. Not just fixing the last tiny bolt and say it was locally produced or manufactured. You can't do that. And also to prevent trade deflection from non-ASEAN countries. We don't want trade to deflect to other non-ASEAN countries. We want to contain it within ASEAN. So let's look at some of the achievement to date. How far has AFTA come? Well, in terms of trade growth, there has been significant increase in intra-ASEAN trade. So intra-ASEAN trade accounted for over 20% of total ASEAN trade. That means total trade in ASEAN, 20% of that comes within trade within ASEAN. In terms of tariff reduction, tariffs on most goods reduced between 0 to 5% among original ASEAN members. That means the 5 countries. All right, the original 5 founding countries. All right, because the other countries that came in much later, you'll find that they still have their own disparity. So they may not be ready to, forego this, all right? And of course, substantial progress in newer members achieving tariff reduction goals as well. So they are gradually adopting it, but, it'll take some time. Economic growth contributed to overall economic growth and development in ASEAN member states. Okay, fine. Enhance economic resilience and competitiveness of the region. So today, the region has become very robust, all right? More investment coming in, all right? The confidence in investing in ASEAN has increased amongst global companies. An increase in foreign direct investment inflows, and ASEAN has become more attractive destination for global investors because we have given the confidence, we have the right infrastructure to support foreign investment. Okay. So what are the ongoing challenges and actions in pursuit? Okay, as much as we have come this far, all right, there are also certain challenges that is it's connected to what I've said just now. It could be a repeat, but just to single that out. Non-tariff barriers, addressing remaining non-tariff barriers that hinder trade. There are many more. Right? They need to look into that. Economic disparities, reducing economic disparities amongst member states to ensure inclusive growth. Inclusive means making sure that everybody benefits, all member countries benefit from that. That is going to take some time. Integration with global economy, strengthening ASEAN's integration with global economy, particularly with South America, Africa, all right, and ensuring compliance with international trade standards and agreement, ongoing as well, all right. And number 4, very important, sustainable development, promoting sustainable economic development and environmental protection. I'm going to give you some case studies later for you to sort of understand what have we achieved so far, and talk of the town digital economy, all right, leveraging digital technologies to enhance trade and economic cooperation. For example, what we're doing today is part of that. Part of that. Today, we can actually conduct cross-border lecture because we have that infrastructure in place between Indonesia and Malaysia and so on. Right today, for example, have university, all right, has business. Have programs in not only in in Indonesia, but we also have it in Vietnam as well. We also have it in Myanmar. All right, so these are the countries that we have engaged, and this is all possible, all right, because of the availability of digital infrastructure. All right, and it is not just about availability, but the infrastructure must be uniform so that we can have access. But let's say it's not uniform, again, it will pose other challenges. Okay, all right. So just to give you some idea as to some of the global partnership that has already been in place, we have got free trade agreements, comprehensive economic partnership with key global economies, including China, Japan, South Korea, India, Australia, and New Zealand, called the ASEAN +6. We also are a member of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, with 15 countries, creating one of the world's largest trading blocs. All right. So that is another free trade agreement that we have signed. All right. And then we have got ASEAN Trade in Goods Agreement, ATIGA, facilitate trade in goods and reduces trade barriers among member states and external partners, not only within, but also with external partners. Okay. And then we have got the ASEAN Investment Area, AIA, policies to attract foreign direct investment, also to streamline regulation and incentives for international investors. So these are in motion now. And then we have got bilateral investment treaties, agreement with non-ASEAN countries to protect and promote investment. All right, so we have to look at that in detail. Today, we are also expanding our focus, not just with the traditional investment partners like China, US, Japan, South Korea, India, but we are also looking at establishing partnership with South America, which has got a huge growing market, in African countries, huge growing market, including the Middle East as well, or West Asia, so to speak. Okay, all right. And then we have got the participation in global forums, the G20 and APEC, and also the World Trade Agreement. So these are some of the initiatives that is going in motion. All right. So let's look at some of the impact and achievement of ASEAN's global integration. Just some statistics, just for you to have an idea as to how far have we come. In terms of trade, significant increase in trade volume with global partners. ASEAN's total trade volume reached 3.3 trillion in 2020, showcasing a robust global trade relationship. In 2022, ASEAN economy reached a nominal GDP of the largest in Asia with 3.6 trillion, positioning it as the largest in the world. All right. And in terms of FDI, all right, inflow into ASEAN, it reached 137 billion in 2020, making the region one of the most attractive investment destinations globally. Right. And in 2022, it reached 224 billion. Look at the shift. It is not incremental, it's leapfrogging. That means it jumps. It's not just incremental, but it jumps. So that really clearly shows how aggressive ASEAN is in promoting trade, not only just within ASEAN, but also with other nations. All right. And then in terms of market expansion, access to larger market, business in ASEAN countries benefit from access to larger markets and diversified export destination. All right. And in terms of global supply chain, integration into global supply chains, enhancing the competitiveness of ASEAN industry. So I remember just now I mentioned about Singapore being the global financial hub. From there, it sort of goes into, it connects to all the other capital, business capital in ASEAN countries. Okay, all right. And then in terms of technology and innovation collaboration, there has been a lot of knowledge transfer, collaboration with global partners in technology and innovation, boosting local industries. I think some of you probably would know about how Tesla, Elon Musk, has visited Indonesia, all right, and has shown interest in investing in Indonesia, all right. These are examples. And then if you look at China, all right, one of the biggest producer of electric vehicles, all right, is focusing on the ASEAN market. For example, Geely, one of the biggest China automobile company, has joined forces with Proton Malaysia, all right, and by virtue of that, they're going to use Malaysia as a platform to launch their vehicle. As you all know, that Geely also owns Volvo, all right. So you are seeing multiple expansion of China vehicles, all right, in not only in ASEAN countries, but also in using as a platform to go beyond ASEAN. Okay. In terms of regional stability, peace and security cooperation, engagement in global security dialogues, and cooperation frameworks, all right, and strengthening of regional stability, fostering conducive environment for economic growth. You see, if you don't have peace, you're going to have a problem. All right, you have to establish, security and peace. Otherwise, investors, business, all right, would not have the confidence to invest. All right, despite the fact that even Myanmar, all right, having issues, their own internal issues politically, but investments are still going to Myanmar via Singapore. Singapore has got a very close relationship with the Myanmar government. As such, a lot of investments are going via Singapore to ASEAN investment going to Myanmar via Singapore. So all these are happening, all right, which allows a greater inclusive economic progression. Okay, all right. Sustainable initiatives by ASEAN. So now we are coming to the thrust of our discussion today, right? What are the sustainable initiatives undertaken by ASEAN? As of 2024, ASEAN has undertaken a range of sustainability initiatives at promoting environmental protection, climate action, and sustainable economic development across the region. It's not just about a single country in ASEAN, but it is cascading to all other ASEAN members, all right? And these initiatives span various sectors, including energy, agriculture, fisheries, and biodiversity conservation. So it's a huge effort because this is over and above. This is over and above all those mechanisms, all right, which are used, which have been put in place to energize economic activities. But this is an addition to that. That means we just don't want an economic progression, but we want to establish a sustainable economic progression. As you all know, right, over the last 50 years, you find that, or rather since independence, right, the objective of all countries globally, not just peculiar to ASEAN, but all countries is to dive into economic progression. But in the haste of trying to improve the economy, one area that has been deeply affected is the environment. Right? Today, issues like climate change, global warming are all the consequence of that. So what we want to do is to arrest it, the damage is already done, all right? We want to arrest it and reverse it. You see that, huh? One is to arrest, the other one is to reverse. So it's a big effort and it involves huge costs. And if the cost is to be undertaken by a single country, that is going to be difficult. But if it is going to be taken jointly, as in the case of ASEAN, as a regional grouping, that will make most sense. All right. So let's look at some of the initiatives. ASEAN Action Plan on Joint Response to Climate Change, AAP JRCC. ASEAN has adopted this regional framework to coordinate member states' effort to address climate change. It focuses on areas such as climate adaptation, mitigation, financing, and capacity building with a goal of meeting the region's commitment to the Paris Agreement. Paris Agreement is a global agreement in looking for ways how to arrest it and reverse it. So that is the global. So from ASEAN's point of view, perspective, or from ASEAN's initiative, ASEAN has came up with the AAP JRCC to do the same. So it's an inclusive approach to adopt, to monitor, all right, and take action to arrest and to reverse. Okay, number one. Number two, ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, APAEC, 2021 to 2025. All right. So APAEC promotes energy efficiency, renewable energy, and sustainable energy access within ASEAN. It targets increasing the share of renewable energy regions' energy mix to 23% by 2025 and reducing energy by 32% compared to 2005 levels. So look at that. They are very specific. It's not something that is written on in the air. No, they are very, very specific. And if you look at the initiatives taken, later I'm going to share with you some case studies, then you'll know how these are being adopted. All right. So what the United Nations has the ESG initiative, 17-point ESG initiatives. So ASEAN has extracted that and came up with their own internalized policy to create their own platform jointly to address the issue. Okay. Next is ASEAN Green Bond Standard. The initiative is part of ASEAN strategy to mobilize capital for environmentally sustainable projects. That means any project that involves environmentally sustainable activity, it will automatically be funded by the capital will be given for those kind of activities. So the ASEAN Capital Market Forum, ACMF, developed the ASEAN Green Bond Standard to attract investment in projects that support renewable energy, energy efficiency, and sustainable transport. That means bringing in foreign investment, providing incentives, subsidies for foreign companies if they are involved in renewable energy efficiency, or sustainable transport system. All right. So that means the government would remove tariffs, may reduce interest rates. If, let's say, the project is based on local funding, for example, right? ASEAN Smart Cities Network, working very well. Launched in 2018, the ASEAN is a collaborative platform to develop sustainable urban infrastructure. Cities across ASEAN are working on solutions related to energy efficiency, clean transportation, water management, and waste reduction, aiming to enhance resilience to the climate change while improving the quality of urban living. All right. Classic case in point, the new capital capital city that is being developed in Kalimantan by the Indonesian government basically is framed based on this particular construct. All right. And newer cities, all right, or sorry, not existing cities are slowly adopting, all right, this process. For example, I live in a city called Subang Jaya. Subang Jaya is a city that is within the Klang Valley. It's about 20 kilometers from Kuala Lumpur, all right. And in this city, all right, one of the things that they do, all right, is if let's say a home, let's say my home, for example, if I have solar panels, if I have water retention, rainwater harvesting, for example, automatically the tax I pay the government to the local government will be reduced or removed altogether. So I must show that my house within this particular city, all right, is eco-friendly. So that means there is a mechanism to motivate more people who live in this city to convert towards their living to an eco lifestyle, for example. So more and more cities, of course, like Jakarta or Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur are all congested cities, all right, are all congested cities. So now there are efforts taken, all right, to decongest it, all right, to decongest it. So this is an example, right, of how ASEAN Smart Cities Network being mooted. ASEAN Sustainable Agriculture Initiative, all right. ASEAN promotes sustainable agriculture practices through programs like ASEAN Guidelines on Sustainable Agriculture. So there are many activities like, for example, paddy farming, palm oil cultivation, all right. All these are agricultural activities, all right. So there are specific guidelines because we have been doing it for a long time. So we have the learning curve. The learning curve itself becomes a platform to create guidelines, all right. So these guidelines encourage practices that reduce environmental impact, conserve natural resources, and improve farmers' resilience to climate change, particularly for smallholder farmers. So this is very important, all right? So we want to create, you see, in ASEAN, all right, in many ASEAN countries, many of the farmers are smallholders. So small holding itself is not very economical. But if you can create a platform where all these farmers can become part of a bigger network, all right, that network can be very not only economical, but they can engage in activities that are eco-friendly in that sense. Right? So this is an initiative. You can see that happening in Vietnam. You can see that happening in in Indonesia. You can see that happening in Thailand. So all these are activities that sort of promotes. So this sustainable agriculture guideline is a very critical guideline that assists, especially smallholder farmers, right? And then you've got your ASEAN Working Group on Nature Conservation and Biodiversity, AWGNCB. This leads regional efforts to conserve biodiversity, promote ecosystem services, and manage natural resources. Indonesia, Malaysia, the Borneo Island, right, are all gifted with biodiversity, all right? So the thing is, how are we going to maintain them? How are we going to make sure that we do not further decimate those, vast, rich biodiversity that is already, which we have already inherited? What are we going to do, right? So project under this working group includes the ASEAN Heritage Parks program, which promotes the conservation of high biodiversity areas across member states. So I'm sure you are aware there are quite a number of heritage parks in Indonesia, in Vietnam, all right, in Kalimantan. I mean, in Borneo Island, you find that a lot is being gazetted, all right, as ASEAN Heritage Park, so that there won't be any development encroaching into those areas as well. So these are things that is which are ongoing. And then we have got the ASEAN Agreement on Transboundary Haze Pollution. This is something to do with both of us, Indonesia and Malaysia. The Malaysians always blame the Indonesian smallholders, farmers, for burning, slash and burn activity, which causes haze in Malaysia. It's an ongoing debate. Whose fault is it and whatever not, all right? But in 2002, all right, an agreement has been signed where primary initiative is to address the recurring issue of haze caused by land and forest fire, particularly Indonesia and Malaysia, which also affects Singapore as well. So the agreement seeks to prevent, monitor, and mitigate transboundary haze pollution, focusing on sustainable land use and management and wildlife control. To be honest with you, in the last 5 years, particularly in the last 5 years, the haze problem has tremendously reduced or has become negligible, which is good. So it took, although it was signed in 2002, but it took almost 20 years to not only just to operationalize it, but to realize the fruits of the monitoring, the enforcement, all right, and also the endorsement of the transboundary haze pollution. So all these are already happening, which we can see, which is good, all right? And then we have got the ASEAN. Okay, this is ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, different from the earlier one, established in 2005. The ACB focuses on promoting biodiversity conservation across ASEAN through regional coordination. Okay, we got that. It works on projects related to protected areas, species conservation, and sustainable use of biological resources. As you all know, our biodiversity holds a lot of potential to be used in medical science, in pharmaceutical, all right? And many other areas that we can think of. So we don't want it to be exploited. We want it to be, activity should be happening, but at the same time, it must be sustainably done. Not at the expense of destroying, not at the expense of making it scarce. All right. Today, pharmaceutical companies are looking at natural remedy as compared to chemical remedies to solve many of the disease that we have in the world today. One area, I'm just talking one area. All right. So this need to be addressed. But if let's say over harvesting, over extraction, it is just going to create scarcity, and that is going to damage the ecosystem of the particular environment. We don't want that, right? Okay. And then we have got the ASEAN Regional Strategy on Sustainable Consumption and Production, SCP. This initiative seeks to transition ASEAN economies toward more sustainable production and consumption patterns. The strategy includes measures to promote resource efficiency, reduce waste, and encourage green technologies, particularly in sectors like manufacturing, food systems, and energy. I'm going to show you an example later, shortly, all right, of how companies have adopted this. So more and more private sector, although ASEAN, all right, is a government-to-government initiative, but the beneficiary of all this are actually private sector. How the idea here is to jointly organize initiatives so that it creates a win-win scenario. Because government cannot just spend money on all this by themselves. If it is something that is jointly, carried out, it will create a win-win scenario. So this is what we call corporate social justice. Unlike corporate social responsibility, CSR, this is CSJ, corporate social justice. More and more companies today are coming in trying to establish an inclusive approach to jointly solve common problems. sustainability issues, right? Okay. And we have got the ASEAN Renewable Energy and Clean Energy collaboration. ASEAN collaborates with various international partners and institutions, including European Union and the United Nations, to develop clean energy projects and build capacity for adoption of renewable energy technologies. This includes initiatives like solar, wind, and hydroelectric power projects. See, hydroelectric is an issue. Today, with global warming, climate change, the water is also trickling down in all the rivers and so on. So you don't have, the traditional hydroelectric power projects are diminishing. So now we are looking at alternatives like solar, wind, the wind turbines. All right. Today, I'm sure if you have seen some parts of Sumatra, all right, there are huge swaths of land with wind turbines. I'm sure you have seen that. All right. So these are examples of looking at ways how we can explore those options. Okay. All right. So those are the initiatives that I just mentioned to you. Now let's look at cases of companies who have adopted this and they have become industry benchmark and created pathway for best practices, not just for ASEAN or within ASEAN, but globally. All right. The first case is the Circular Economy Initiative in Thailand by Siam Cement Group. Siam Cement Group is a private company making cement. All right. So they have created what we call a Circular Economy Initiative. So SCG is a leader in integrating circular economy principles into its business model. The company has embraced a sustainable practice by reducing waste, promoting recycling, and minimizing environmental impact. So what are they doing? Today it is known as the SCG Circular Way. It's a model that is being practiced, adopted by other companies as well, the SCG Circular Way. So what does it do? Waste recycling, turning waste material into cement production into new product. See, when you make cement, there's a byproduct. By means there's a waste, right? Cement, waste. So they are taking this waste and converting into another product. Number one. Number two, sustainable packaging solution, using recycled materials and designing for recyclability in packaging. All right. Number two. Number three, energy efficiency and renewable energy. So SCG plants use alternative energy source, reducing reliance on fossil fuel. Solar, they're using a lot of solar energy. So they don't want to depend on those fossil fuel, electricity produced out of coal or out of diesel and so on and so forth. All right. So SCG's approach has helped establish Thailand as a regional leader in promoting sustainability in the manufacturing sector. So more and more companies today, not only in Thailand, but ASEAN as well as globally, are adopting the SCG Circular Way. Okay, interesting. Number two is Malaysia. Sustainable palm oil production, one of the most criticized industry. One is for the haze issue. The other one is for damage to the forests, destruction of forests, orangutan, what do you call that? Orangutan habitats have been destroyed and so on. I'm sure you would have read about it quite a bit, right? So Malaysia is a global leader in palm oil production, but this industry has historically been associated with environmental challenges, including deforestation and biodiversity loss. So in response, Malaysia has played a critical role in promoting the sustainable palm oil through the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil Certification System. That means the Malaysian government came up with a certification system to identify whether the palm oil has been ethically cultivated, produced. And this is something that has become a world standard. So wherever that you go in the world, all right, I'm sure palm oil is not only cultivated in Malaysia or Indonesia, but also in other parts of the world, you need this certification to say, to make sure that the industry itself, the agricultural practice itself is sustainable. So what are the initiatives? Zero deforestation. So RSPO certified plantation commit to stopping deforestation and protecting primary forests. That means they don't go into the primary forest. Stop. Fair labor practice, very important. Emphasis on improving the working condition and respecting human rights in the palm oil supply chain. Many a times you find that palm oil industry have been saddled with criticism, saying that employees, workers are exploited and so on. So with this certification, we know that fair labor practice is being adopted. And then this is very important, smallholder inclusion. Supporting smallholders to adopt sustainable practice and achieve certification, which improves their livelihoods while reducing environmental impact. That means not only that large companies benefit from this, but they also take initiative to include smallholders so that their produce are also given equal accreditation, so to speak. So this initiative has positioned Malaysia as a global leader in sustainable agriculture, driving responsible practice in the palm oil industry. So this standard is not only practiced in the palm oil industry, but also in other form of agricultural activity. Okay. Public-private green energy collaboration, Singapore, Solar Nova program. Solar Nova. Singapore has taken a major step towards increasing its renewable energy capacity through initiatives called Solar Nova, a government-led program to accelerate the adoption of solar energy in both public and private sector. So the government has created the Solar Nova program, providing incentives to allow companies, both private and public sector, to migrate into adopting solar energy. All right. So what has it done? Well, aggregating demand for solar energy, the program consolidates solar installation across multiple public buildings, reducing costs through economies of scale. So the more you use, the better it is. All right. Incentivizing green buildings, very important. Businesses are encouraged to adopt energy efficient solar integrated designs, backed by financial incentives and regulatory support. So the government gives you that incentives so that more and more buildings. This is also called intelligent building. Incentivizing green building, also intelligent building. Cross-sector partnership, Solar Nova fosters collaboration between both government agency, private companies, and researchers to promote innovation in solar energy technologies. So very critical, right? So how has it what is the progress? Solar Nova has helped Singapore meet its ambitious renewable energy goal and become a role model for sustainable urban energy management in ASEAN. So remember just now I mentioned about smart cities. This one is adopted in smart cities initiative. Okay. Now, this is Indonesia. The Danone Aqua Sustainable Water Management and Plastic Waste Reduction Initiative. This is in Indonesia. So Danone Aqua, one of the Indonesia's largest bottled water companies, has pioneered sustainable business practice through its commitment to water stewardship and the circular economy, quite similar to the SCG in Thailand. This is a multi-pronged approach. So Danone Aqua follows a comprehensive water management strategy to ensure the sustainability of water resources. And this approach includes, number one, watershed protection, The company invests in reforestation and ecosystem restoration programs to protect watershed and improve groundwater recharge. What is reforestation? To replant trees, to restore ecosystems. All right, so that when there's canopy above, roots down, rainwater goes right to the ground. So it improves groundwater. Okay. Community water access. It has developed partnership with local communities to provide access to clean water and improve water infrastructure in rural areas. So wherever they are, they don't just have water for themselves, but they also create a symbiotic relationship with the community. They also provide clean water. Water efficient operation. Danone Aqua has implemented water-saving technologies in its production process, ensuring efficient use of this vital resource. So not a single drop of the water that they whether it's whether input level or output level do not go wasted. All right. So that's very important. And in Danone's plastic waste management, Danone Aqua has adopted a circular economy approach to tackle plastic waste, setting ambitious goal to reduce, reuse, and recycle plastic. So that's water. Now the bottling, packaging, plastic. So recyclable packaging, the company is moving towards using 100% recyclable plastic for its bottles and packaging, ensuring that the material can be reintegrated into the economy. So it's not just throw away. They collect it and recycle. Inclusive recycling programs. Danone Aqua collaborates with waste pickers and recycling cooperatives to ensure that post-consumer plastic waste is collected and recycled. The Aqua Peduli program, probably some of you heard of this, Aqua Peduli program involves local communities in plastic waste collection and promotes plastic recycling. Very interesting. That means they get the community to be part of that circular economy. And plastic waste reduction goals, the company aims to use at least 50% recycled plastics in its bottles by 2025 and achieve zero plastic waste leakage into the nature. So, very ambitious. They are moving closer. 2025 is not very far. All right. So, I believe that they are moving in the right direction. So what is the recognition impact of Danone Aqua? Number one, Danone Aqua initiatives have been widely recognized as industry best practices, contributing to Indonesia's broader goals of reducing plastic waste and improving environmental sustainability. So you see, industry best practices global. The company's effort align with both the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, and Indonesia's national waste reduction target. So that means they are complying, adhering, conforming to the SDG 17 initiatives, right? And through its combination of responsible water management and commitment to reducing plastic waste, Danone Aqua serves as a model of sustainable business in Indonesia. So this is something that all of you must be mindful of, how they have come a long way. All right, and they're serious about it, and they have come a long way and had made a difference, not only in Indonesia, but globally as well. So, we've come to the last part of my presentation. All right, what are the key takeaways from sustainable business practice that provide opportunities for both regional and global business? All right, there are 4 takeaways. Pioneering the circular economy model, driving global demand for sustainable palm oil, collaborating on green energy and smart cities, and fourthly, supporting inclusive growth through sustainable agriculture. 4. Let's look at one by one. So in the case of pioneering the circular economy model, many ASEAN companies such as SCG, Danone Aqua have successfully adopted the circular economy model in industries like manufacturing, packaging, and waste management. Their commitment to recycling, waste reduction, and sustainable resource use has set new standards for the region. So that means it is not just about the company, it's about the region, right? And these models are now being replicated by other businesses in ASEAN and beyond, creating opportunities for innovative waste management technologies and sustainable supply chain growth globally. So not only just about the company, about the region, but it has become a global standard. All right, that's the first one. Second one, driving global demand for sustainable palm oil. Palm oil is a, is a big multi-billion-dollar business. Palm oil itself is considered to be a wonder oil. Palm oil can, you can make chemical out of it. You can use it as oil, what do you call it? As an additive in your fuel. All right. At the same time, you can make it into food. Your margarine and cooking oil and so on. Look at the diversity of it, from chemical right up to food. That's why I say wonder plant. So Malaysia's leadership in sustainable palm oil through the RSPO certification has not only set global standard for sustainable agriculture, but also opened up markets for responsibly sourced products. Okay, and the shift towards zero deforestation and ethical labor practice has allowed local companies to access environmentally conscious market in Europe, North America, and Asia. So there are countries where they've got strict regulation. If it is not ethically sourced, whatever product that comes out of it, whether it's raw or finished product, they would impose a ban on it. So you have to show proof that you have the RSPO certification. And this success presents an opportunity for global companies to integrate sustainable palm oil into their supply chain while meeting consumers' demand for ethically sourced product. Okay, so that's what it means. Okay, all right. Thirdly, collaborating on green energy and smart city. ASEAN companies, particularly those in Singapore, have been the forefront of renewable energy and smart city initiatives such as the Solar Nova program. In fact, the city that is being built in Kalimantan, all right, is using Solar Nova program as well. So these efforts have been established as a framework for integrating green energy solution into urban infrastructure, providing a model for other cities in the region globally, whether new cities or existing cities, migrating from what it is towards more towards adopting a green energy solution, right? So the success of such programs offer multinational companies opportunities to collaborate in green energy projects, smart building solutions, and urban sustainability innovation in ASEAN and other regions focused on sustainable urban growth. So this is the direction. Everybody's moving in the direction. So if we have a platform, we have a model, share the model. Opportunities are there. And the fourth one, the last one, is supporting inclusive growth through sustainable agriculture. In countries like Indonesia and the Philippines, the success of sustainable business practice in agriculture has not only reduced environmental impact, but also improved the livelihoods of smallholder farms, which I mentioned just now. And programs like Indonesia's Danone Aqua, water stewardship, and sustainable palm oil farming have created opportunities for local communities to engage in global value chain. That means they are not left behind. You're not totally dependent on third middlemen. You can directly engage. All right. And this creates a win-win situation, win-win scenario for both farmers and the end users. This presents a scalable model for international agribusiness companies to work alongside local farmers to enhance sustainability while addressing poverty alleviation and food security in developing regions. So it's a win-win thing. All right. Farmers are always branded as being poor because they always depend on the middleman, not economically producing the produce. So with this inclusive approach, all right, smallholders, farmers, smallholders are able to engage at a global level, at a global arena. Okay, all right. So that's it. So I hope that what I've given you, all right, it's a lot to digest. Let me tell you, it's a lot to digest. I can understand. All right, I will share this PowerPoint to everybody. All right, to the school, and the school can share this PowerPoint to the audience. All right, no issues, no problem. So it's a big scope. All right, I've tried to compress it in a very in a very short presentation. But I hope all of you all benefited from my short lecture. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for your presentation. For our participant, if you have any question for the speaker, please add them to the chat or you can raise your hand. Yeah, and we have three questions here from participant already read in the room chat.
Okay, I will look at Abdul. Abdul asks, in the context of driving sustainable business practice across ASEAN region, what do you think the biggest challenges that local companies face in integrating sustainability in their model, especially when dealing with different regulations across countries, and how can business overcome these regulation differences and adopt best practice? Okay, now the biggest challenge is even that is one thing. The biggest challenge is, of course, cost. Whenever you see, there's always this thing called initial cost. So many SMEs, large companies are fine, but many SMEs finding that they don't have the required investment to invest in such an area. So this is where, all right, SMEs can actually communicate directly with ASEAN Secretariat, with local representative in respective countries and say, hey, look, I would like to do this. What kind of assistance can we provide? Many people do not know that such facilities are available. I think that's what the first level is, knowing where to seek advice. So if it's Indonesia, you have got the ASEAN Secretariat there, go direct, go to your local representative and find out what kind of facilities are available. That's the first one. Now, in terms of regulatory differences, I think that is that can be addressed easily, all right, using the ASEAN platform, because through the ASEAN, what do you call that, agreements, all right, depending on the nature of industry, all right, you have to identify what kind of facilities are available to go around it. I think it's not a problem at all. You see, the thing is, I personally believe it's ignorance. That is what's stopping people from, stopping companies from actually engaging in sustainable activities. Ignorance. So once you know, all right, once you know that the infrastructure is available, once you know that there are what do you call it, platforms available to seek advice, all right, to seek consultancy. In fact, to be honest with you, ASEAN itself has got FOC consultancy, where if you have got an idea, you can bring forward to them and they would be able to give you ideas as to how to progress further. Considering Keenan here, considering the growing emphasis, how can ASEAN business take advantage of global shift towards green ethical practice? Are there any specific sectors? No, I think I already answered that question. I think your answer is something that I already answered here, because there's so many initiatives that and there are, I've given you case studies of how companies are doing. In fact, like let's say, for example, if an Indonesian company wants to move to using solar energy, for example, you can directly communicate with Solar Nova. They'll be more than happy to assist you. So it's not a problem at all. Or SCG, the SCG circular way. You can directly communicate with them, tell them, okay, can you share your know-how? They are more than willing to do that, because it adds value to their model. So they would want as many people, as many companies to adopt it. Okay. Next is, in terms of best practice, how can multinational corporations operating in ASEAN ensure that sustainability efforts are aligned with both local communities? Yes, I already given you examples already. All right. So if you look at Nestle, is a good example. They have got, what do you call it, endorsed sustainability effort in their entire. In fact, Nestle is one company that has gone into a circular, adopting circular mode. Procter and Gamble, all right, it's another company that is using what we call the triple bottom line model. People, planet, profit. I'm sure you are a business student. I'm sure you know what triple bottom line is. They have adopted that. So many companies are doing that. So it is not that they are not doing. What is important is the host government must monitor, all right, and also endorse those initiatives. More importantly, monitor. If they say they are doing this, there must be an audit done to see whether they are doing what they claim they're doing. Then it makes more sense. Okay? All right. So there are three questions. Any other question? No, I don't see anything else. Okay, all right. I
Yeah.
guess, thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you for answering. I think it's very clear answer from Professora. Yeah, before I close this event, for our participant, please open your camera. I will take a picture on the count of three. Okay, one, two, three. Okay, another one, one, two, three. Thank you for your kind cooperation. Finally, we come to the end of visiting lecture today. We would like to thank you for Mr. Ravi for the wonderful information and sharing your knowledge. We hope this information will be beneficial for all participants. At least we hope to have more collaboration in the future with Help University Malaysia. The visiting lecture for today and here. We hope to see you soon. Thank you and have a nice day.